Last call for Jimmy Neutron.
Yo-ho, Spiny! You still playing those Sonic games?
Yeah, I'm still playing Sonic.
Cool. I just got done playing all the Jimmy Neutron games, and let me tell you, that was an experience.
I'm sorry, do I know you?
There were 3 console games, plus 2 PC exclusives. I played the 5 major releases, starting with the first one, Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius, for PS2 and GameCube. A movie tie-in, naturally, arriving around the same time as the movie in 2001.
Jimmy Neutron was that show of the Genius Sisters, right? Talking dog, a lot of whip cracking.
No, you're thinking of Johnny Quest. Anyways, the console version is a collect-a-thon, with Jimmy needing to go to 5 different levels to collect various things. And your eyes aren't fooling you, this game steals a lot from Crash Bandicoot. Unfortunately, good graphics and gameplay aren't among them. These are some ugly models, but we better start with the gameplay. The platforming is just awful. It's too hard to aim and way too picky about where you jump from. Also, there's just no way to move the camera, which, like, come on, Mario 64 let you move the camera, and that game was 5 years old at this point. There are paths and platforms it's not clear you can use because they're off-screen. Why would you put stuff off-screen when you know I can't move the camera? Plus, it makes it next to impossible to collect every atom, something the game clearly wants you to do as it shows you how many there are, and congratulates you if you get all of the items in a given area. But how am I supposed to jump across these rocks to get to that last one? The game would seriously be like 20% better if you could just move the damn camera. There's combat in this game, but it's more like you combating the game. Unless you absolutely have to, I'd avoid killing the enemies. They take as many hits as you, although they're pretty easy to stun lock if you do have to kill them. There are weapons such as a baseball bat, shrink ray, and inflating ray, but they only last a few seconds, and like, come on, you put them in the game, make them permanent unlocks that you can cycle through. It wouldn't even make the game that much easier. The hitboxes are janky as hell, but that helps you as much as it hurts you. You are as hard to hit as everything else. Occasionally, you'll find a Goddard that can turn into a pogo stick or a scooter. The pogo stick is required in some parts and works fine, but the scooter has no clear purpose that I could find. Nothing is inaccessible without it, and honestly, it's more of a hindrance than anything, so I recommend avoiding it. Although, you know, I also recommend you avoid this game. It also feels like they're missing a level. The game starts at Retroland with Nick congratulating you for sneaking out, and then it just throws you into it and expects you to know what you're doing. It feels like there should be like an introductory tutorial level before we get here, but it fits with the game's theme of not communicating anything to you. Like here, if you end up on the lower floor of Jimmy's lab, you have to kick this barrel to get back to the top. How was I supposed to know that without looking it up? And the game is just filled with shit like that. Things you need to know that just aren't communicated. Look at that. Does it look like I accomplished anything there? Well, apparently I did, because you gotta hit this guy 3 times to kill him. As for the content of the game, the challenge is almost entirely from the bad controls and poor communication. Some of these missions are ludicrously easy. And man, this game is not pleasant to look at. This would have looked bad on PS1. This was pretty unacceptable for the time. They've turned Jimmy into a mouth breather. Oh, but he's gotten off better than Nick. Okay, so the controls and visuals are fucked up. What else can we fuck up? How about the sound? Loud gurgling. No gurgling. Great sound design. There's the hilarious, like this 2-second loop of fire. The pointless, like these ants clicking. And the flat-out annoying, like the air blowing sounds in most of the levels. I guess that is something you can turn off, though. What you cannot turn off is this game's glaring lack of Rob Paulsen.
My inhaler! That's swell, Jimmy.
Pretty much everyone has their original voice except Carl, who sounds more like Irwin from Billy and Mandy.
Stupid alien! Without those glasses, I'm doomed! Doomed!
Hey, you! Get your darn hands off that, yo!
So let's talk about the levels. Level 1 is Retroland, broken down into 5 sections, 0 of which are based on Bat Outta Heck, but 3 of which are based on Show Me the Mummy. Okay, I'm wrong. This one's based on a ride you can see way in the background for like 2 seconds. This clown level makes me uncomfortable. I have never seen something so embody the phrase "the vibes are rancid." Cindy asks you to find her dog, and you just walk a little to the left and he's there. Believe me, I wish this entire game was that easy. Level 2 is the lab and Jimmy's house, which is easily the best level of the game because A, there's very little platforming involved, and B, they did a pretty good job translating the setting. This is easily the least ugly level. Level 3 is the comet from the middle of the movie, just completely skipping one of the movie's coolest moments without so much as a cutscene. Also, this is not an action scene, this is time for the kids to bond. They've added Yokians and the asteroid monster from Empire Strikes Back and whatever the fuck these are to try to make it a rescue mission. You gotta save 5 kids. Carl, Cindy, Nissa, Rose, and Zachary? Why not Sheen? Or Libby, who's not even in the fucking game. And here's where the bad platforming and no camera start to be a problem. You gotta do this jump over some insta-kill slime to get where you need to go, but that place is actually a snowboard portion with a split path, meaning you'll have to go over the acid 3 times minimum to beat the level. And you have to hop on this rock that's fucking off-screen. Gee, maybe a rotating camera would help me with this. So they skipped the opening with the military and the Retroland liftoff. But do you know what scene from the movie they decided to use for level 4?
The one where Dee Dee gets into Jimmy's lab?
No, that's Johnny Quest again. It's the fucking comet! Again! That was a 3-minute scene with no enemies! Hell, in the game you have to go into a Yokian mining facility? Why couldn't this just be on Yokus Prime? This is where the game goes from bad to unplayable. The level opens on this snowboarding section, and yes, the snowboard controls are exactly as janky as you'd expect, but up to this point they've compensated for it by making it really slow and not fun. But then in level 4 they introduce jumps! I have already complained about how precise some of the platforming is, so how do you think that fares when you've got constant forward momentum?
And it borrowed a ton from Battle for Bikini Bottom, but like...
Did you guys see that? 2 levels on the Yokian homeworld, right? You fight the You fight the Yokians, and
But it's a great scene. Oh my god, what the fuck? That was bullshit. I talked too much too. But, god damn. Oh.
Just grow some balls, it's easy.
And still missed that. Nope, okay. I don't know what I'm doing wrong here that I did the first time somehow.
It's a game that, one, had a funny script, which the show hadn't had for such a long time.
The Monsters, Inc. game. The Monsters, Inc. game.
Where there was a time where it's just like, oh, if you have a movie, it's like, especially if it's an animated movie, it's getting a video game.
Usually because they're not finished with the movie when they start working on the game.
I've always heard great things about the DuckTales game, I've never played it.
Thinking about that.
Real poor. Like, I got the game when it came out, and I was like so underwhelmed by it. You know what happens with me in that game every time, like where I finally break off of it?
I hope everyone who worked on this game has constant intrusive thoughts about the embarrassing Jimmy Neutron game they made. And you've got finite lives, so even if you beat this portion, there's a chance you'll have to do it again when you game over. And to make matters worse, level 4 is way longer than the other levels, so there's more opportunity to game over. You cannot have platforming challenges until your platforming fucking works! Also, when you game over, you gotta load your save file again, which is just an added layer of tedium to the game. Just give me a continue screen. And just for fun, here's a couple extra nitpicks about this level. In this section, it seems like you should be able to jump out onto this platform, you know, like you would in any other game, but no, you have to climb out on the wing to progress. Similarly, this platform you can walk onto without jumping, and then it whips around to this angle, which looks like you should be able to walk off it, but no, you fall and die. Also, when you jump between these gears, Jimmy just sort of awkwardly moves to the left in a way that just isn't right. But you know, you die to it a few times and then you get the hang of it. Level 5 is insanely easy by comparison. I only got a game over once. You run around Yoka's Prime to free parents with an ending showdown against Ooblar, obviously not voiced by Martin Short, but also not voiced by the guy from the show. It's a totally different voice.
Long by my shattered shell, now you've really done it! Release the Annihilators!
And then level 6 has 2 extremely easy areas, a platforming segment that's awful, but what else is new, and then a fight where you have to trick Poltra into attacking these guns. They don't make that very clear, and it's also very easy to defeat her while you're dying. Also, Poltra is easily the worst asset in the game. This bitch is horrifying. And for the game's final boss, you fight King Goobot by throwing eggs at his guns and then kicking the shit out of him. He takes as many hits to defeat as every other Yokian. Although I did spend a while throwing eggs at him because the game couldn't miss one last opportunity to not communicate something to you. And so Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius for console ends not with a bang but with a whimper. As for positives, there's not a lot. I appreciate that it only takes 10 atoms to get a free life, but only because I needed every single one of them. Also, this section was nice to look at, although given that there's no threat here and it ties into nothing in the movie, nor anything else in the game, I'm not really sure why it's here. It feels like a bonus area, but you have to go through here to beat the level. Also, there's a Dexter's Lab reference. I liked that, although I don't know who this other kid is. By all accounts, it seems like the game was a rush job. I mean, it's unpolished enough that you might just assume that from looking at it, but my strongest evidence is actually the cutscene that plays when you boot the game. It has clips from the movie, but there are way more clips from Runaway Rocket Boy, the Jimmy Neutron test pilot, as well as a couple clips from the preview shorts that aired ahead of the movie. I'm pretty sure every shot of the Yokians in this is from Runaway Rocket Boy, no movie footage for them. And that'll forgive some stuff. Character models, sound design, even controls and a lack of camera movement. But if you knew you weren't putting out a high quality product, you could have at least made the game easier. Like I said, give me permanent weapons, and don't bother with a life system. Level 1 has infinite lives, and the game would be at least marginally improved if every level did. And holy shit, please, a little leeway on these jumps would go a long way. It seems the studio behind this game, Big Sky, only made one other game, SpongeBob Revenge of the Flying Dutchman, before closing its doors. Can't imagine why with their quality of output. This game is bad. Unequivocally bad. Possibly the worst game I've ever completed. This is the type of game I would have been so excited to get as a kid, played once, and then never felt the desire to play again. It's not the absolute bottom of the barrel when it comes to licensed games, but I'd still say it's well below average in a genre where the bar is pretty fucking low.
Hey, there are some good licensed games.
Oh, you mean like Rise of Lyric?
Okay, well, no need to be hurtful.
Yeah, that one was below the belt. I'm sorry. There's also a game based on the movie for PC that is completely different. This was weirdly common practice at the time, and I don't know why. Pretty much everyone, especially kids, are just gonna assume the games are the same and only buy one. Hell, most websites list these as the same game despite them being wildly different. And listen, Jimmy Neutron for PC is a bad game, make no mistakes. But this is what you expect from bad licensed games. It is completely playable. So I may end up being nice nicer to this game than I should be just because it's leagues ahead of the last game. It's open world, which is odd. And look, it's not GTA, it's not even Simpsons Hit and Run, but it's kinda interesting. I did explore most of these areas, and because I wanted to run around Retroville, not just because I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing. Although, once or twice it was because I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing. The game just directly gives you a list of quests that need to be completed to progress, and otherwise you can wander around as you please. Look at this, in Retroland you can ride Show Me the Mummy. Although if you try to ride Bat Outta Heck, Jimmy says,
I don't want to go in there.
come on, that's the coolest ride. Test your IQ. Well, heck, let's test our IQ, guys. Apparently it's pretty low because we're not allowed in there. And where the last game did not communicate anything to you, this game almost communicates too much. There are arrows pointing at things I can't interact with. I spent like 2 minutes trying to pick up this fishbowl before I realized Jimmy was telling me to go find the fish. The graphics are nicer to look at, but not by much. In fact, the one thing I will give the console version over this is their Cindy and their Goddard looked better. And poor Nick. Maybe one of these games will get you right. Also, I think Jimmy's house looked a little better on console, but this one's open world, so I'll let that slide. But then there's stuff like the square edges that appear when you use the bubble, and a lot of these models are flat 2D sprites that rotate to face you, like Doom or Duke Nukem, games that were nearly 10 years old at this point. And some of these are just straight up photographs. Presenting the Krabby Patty! And this game really shoves its assets in your face. Pull the camera back, please! Similarly, the controls are bad, but the levels are much more accommodating. This game has tank controls, and yes, the platforming is bad, but a lot of platforms the game just lets you climb on, and most of the worst platforming is optional anyways. They made the game easy for kids, but also left in some challenge just in case. The challenges are difficult, tedious, and no fun, but at least they're optional. I'd honestly be hard-pressed to say which game has worse controls, but here the game feels like it was built to work with the controls, unlike console where the level design is actively fighting against you. Although there are 2 rocket ship portions that are very slow and control like complete ass, nothing as bad as the snowboard level, but still, this sucks. Worth noting, though, that I played Jimmy for console on a controller while this PC game is mapped to the arrow keys. Also, shift is jump and spacebar is menu. Usually it's the opposite of that, so I kept opening the menu when I meant to jump. I'm sure there was probably a way to set up a controller with this game, but after how much of a pain in the ass it was to install, I figured it just wasn't worth it. I do adore this Windows 95 era install screen, even if I had to sit through it way too many times. Goddard has a scooter mode in this too, and what do you know, it's actually kinda helpful at getting around faster. I'd prefer a run button, but this is something. They've made more of their voice actors, but that actually starts to get annoying with Jimmy saying the same shit all the time. There's a T-Rex chasing the school bus, and Jimmy's over here like... Incidentally, the T-Rex chasing a school bus gets zero elaboration. It's just happening and Jimmy does nothing to stop it.
But I saw something outside that looked really neat. Follow me and I'll show you.
Whoa, who's that? I thought Carl sounded like this. Yeah, no idea why Rob Paulsen is in this game but not the other game. I guess he was busy during the 5 days they had to develop that. Then again, they give Goddard a voice and it is so absolutely wrong.
Tell Mom and Dad I love them. Do your best to bring me home.
I'll be back.
They do have Libby in the game, so they bothered to find out who the important characters were. They also have Darwin, a character so important you'll only hear about him in this extended cut. He doesn't even have an entry on the Jimmy Neutron wiki. See, I actually remember Darwin from a book I had as a kid, My Book of Inventions, a book showcasing many of the inventions that appeared in the movie. His inclusion in this book and the game makes me suspect he was planned for the movie, but ultimately cut, probably because he was seen as promoting evolution, which at the time was a touchy subject among stupid parents. including mine. I suppose the console port also got closer to the film's plot, even if it is the most stripped down telling of the story. That said, the PC game feels like it has a more complete story despite deviating wildly from the movie. The Yokians already know who Jimmy is at the start of the game and are hunting him down. From there you collect a variety of inventions, cause hey, guess what? They're permanent unlocks in this one. Yay. Then you get in a scooter race with Nick to win, a map to Area 51? How did Nick get this? And why are we going to Area 51? From here, you have to collect parts for a new invention, and then, for reasons I am unable to parse, Jimmy ends up on the Yokian ship and has to escape. The stuff on the ship is definitely the most difficult part, but it's still pretty forgiving. Honestly, this game might be too easy. Like in this race with Nick, I almost lapped him, and I wasn't even really trying. You can add a little challenge to your game, just don't make it so I have to run this perfect to win. Anyways, after traveling to Area 51 and getting abducted, you're tasked with getting some keys from your dad so your mom can get some wrenches. Which actually does tie into the movie because Mrs. Neutron says Hugh's car needs a new transmission. This game finally resolves that. Mom, just open the garage door, I'm right here. Also, I guess you need to collect parts for a science fair project, because Jimmy can't just show off his functional shrink ray that apparently has a clone function?
Oh no! I had my shrink ray set on clone.
Then Sheen wants you to go to Retroland to get Ultralord's autograph in exchange for some parts. Sheen, why don't you go to Retroland? Give me my damn parts! Then Carl is abducted by the Yokians, and from here the story goes off the rails. You have to get your rocket back from Ultralord, or at least a guy in an Ultralord costume. Why does he have that?
Remember I loaned mine to you when yours got stuck in customs back in Tokyo? Huh? Remember?
Of course, little man.
Okay. You talk to Cindy to get the keys to Miss Foul's class and have this beautiful interaction.
But I need to rescue Carl from space!
My therapist warned me about you, Jimmy. There are no such things as aliens. Oh no! There's the key, Jimmy! Hurry, Jimmy Neutron! You're our only hope!
Women.
Then you go to Miss Foul's class to get her access card to the local nuclear power plant, where I guess Miss Foul just moonlights. Teachers don't get paid enough, gotta get a second job doing whatever Homer Simpson does. And then Jimmy goes in and steals plutonium. Jimmy, I think those fans might have been on for a reason. Then it's off to fight the Yokian Fleet Commander. Goobot and Ooblar are absent from the game entirely. And Jimmy just shrinks one guy and they surrender. There's not even a boss fight. And everyone stands around congratulating you one by one.
Congratulations! Congratulations! Congratulations.
And then the game sends you back to the beginning, which kinda sucks. It's open world, let me explore more. Overall, Jimmy Neutron for PC is not a very good game, but as a kid I probably wouldn't have noticed. There's enough to do that's fun that I probably would have just enjoyed running around Retroville. Plus a lot of the time it's bad in funny ways. It was not the chore Jimmy for console was. It held my interest and the truly infuriating parts were usually optional. So honestly, I don't know why this wasn't just the console version too. I get it, a game console and a PC had different computing capabilities, but what in this game is so complicated it wouldn't work on PS2 or GameCube? I guess consoles just weren't powerful enough to render Rob Paulson's voice. Making two different games is pointless, and it's very easy to tell which of these two games you should have gone with. My guess is that it has something to do with either time or money. Jimmy Neutron for console was either cheaper or quicker to make than porting the PC game. That would certainly explain a lot. The PC game actually had a direct sequel, Jimmy Neutron vs. Jimmy Negatron, the only one of these games not based on an episode, released in 2002.
Shouldn't it be Jimmy Electron?
That only works if there's also a good Jimmy named Jimmy Proton. I do buy that our Jimmy is neutral rather than good, though. It's got the same assets, same mechanics, same tank controls. They have made the spacebar fire instead of menu, so that's nice. This one seemed to run into more issues, but I am playing a 20-year-old game on a computer it was never meant to play on, so that's kinda to be expected. This introduces Jimmy Negatron, an evil version of Jimmy from an alternate dimension. Not his evil clone from the show, this is a completely original character. And look at his stupid fucking goatee. It's like someone opened up his texture file in MS Paint and just spray painted a goatee on. They very obviously did not get Miss Fowl or Libby's voice actors in this one, which is weird since they were both in the first game.
Now, class, over here we have a replica of the first stainless steam engine, which was invented by Norville Flugelhammer in 1892.
They've also updated Cindy to her TV design, which is more effort than I expected from these developers. The story starts with Jimmy trying to fix a time machine Albert Einstein built, I think, in a museum. Little does he know, Jimmy Negatron is waiting for him to activate one of his inventions to swap places with him. Clean parents' cage. I guess some things stay the same no matter what universe you're in. Trying to teleport back home, Jimmy ends up needing to use Goddard's fly mode, which is something that would help you in like 100 other different spots in this game, but whatever. You occasionally have to collect parts to make new inventions, but the game only lets you use them in specific levels they want you to have them. I guess that's fine, there's never a point where you'd want the weapons and don't have them, it's just kinda lame. The aiming is a lot better in this one, but the tank controls might actually be worse. Like the first, it is pretty forgiving in the platforming, actually just teleporting you back to where you were if you fall off. But like, if you know the controls are bad, don't change the game to accommodate them, fix the controls! And it does nothing for picking things up, which is a pain every single time. But even that pales in comparison to this awful fucking submarine section. It took me 2 whole minutes to pick up this wire because up and forward are both mapped to the up button. And the hitboxes on the mouth of this cave are nonsense. I have no idea how I got out, I just happened to randomly mash the correct series of buttons. Every level ends with this really confusing splash screen that stays up way longer than I think is necessary. Once back in his own dimension, Jimmy must deal with 3 different problems Negatron has created. You're allowed to do these in whichever order you feel. First you got Carl, who's become giant, and Jimmy has to feed him food to make him smaller? Jimmy, you have a shrink ray. It was your only weapon in the last game. The rocket does control a little better in this game because you at least have an accelerate button, plus putting it out in the open rather than a small cavern really helps. Next, Libby is being sucked into Vox, Jimmy's computer system that plays a much bigger role in the video games. I don't even know if it appeared after the movie. I kinda like this level, good aesthetics, some degree of challenge without being impossible, and you're in a tank, so the tank controls actually work. This boss fight is a joke though, you just shoot this wasp thing and he takes way too many hits considering there's no strategy, you're just fucking blasting him. And then you gotta save Miss Fowl and your parents from being entombed in the mummy exhibit. What the hell? Why is there so much mummy shit in these games? This segment is way longer than the other 2. It accounts for a quarter of my gameplay. There's platforming, color matching puzzles, combat, a floor maze, a slide section, and somehow none of it is noteworthy. There was a funny glitch where Jimmy appeared outside a door he just opened, then proceeded to walk out the door he was already out. Then Negatron steals Jimmy's time machine to change the past. Alright, when are we going? The pirate era? Medieval times? The Jurassic period? Are we finally gonna get an answer about that dinosaur in the first game? Nah, it's just a bunch of holidays from within the last year. I told you guys this was my Christmas video. Halloween, you gotta build a new earthquake invention to defeat him, but then in Christmas and 4th of July, you get the scooter and the jetpack from the last game, and you just run into him? Come on, I don't even get to shoot fireworks at him. I don't know why these needed to be set at specific holidays, they could have just been random levels. And finally, you enter the Purple Flurp Factory to shut down Negatron's development of Black Flurp. And then after you defeat him, he goes, "Ah, but I also made robot dinosaurs!" and then you gotta destroy all the robot dinosaurs. It's tedious and not all that fun, and honestly a bit anticlimactic as we've already defeated Negatron, but nowhere near as anticlimactic as the first PC game. Improvements have been made with Negatron, but ultimately I think I like the first PC game a little better, purely because of it being open world. Running around exploring was one of the best parts of the game. It's a real shame they did away with that. This game's so linear, and most of it is not fun. Also, you can beat the whole thing in 3 hours. A kid I don't think would enjoy this one as much. They'd likely beat it in 1 or 2 sittings, and it's not like there's much else to do once you beat it. Then in 2003, we got Jimmy Neutron Jet Fusion for PS2 and GameCube, and do you notice something missing from the cover? Like, I don't know, maybe Jet Fusion? Yeah, the title character is nowhere on this box. Even in the manual, Jimmy and Goddard get nice PNGs, but the one and only image of Jet Fusion is his model from the game. This whole project's bizarre. Jet Fusion was a Season 2 episode, but this all feels like it was based on a style guide made before the movie. Cindy has her movie design, Miss Fowl is wearing the same brown shirt she wore in the PC game, instead of her show and movie accurate orange shirt, and Goddard is voiced by Frank Welker, just like he is in that one short from before the movie.
I have a Play Dead mode. If you hold the Play Dead button, you can control me for 3 seconds.
Seems logical, Captain.
Oh yeah, she was that kid who obsessed over every tiny detail of his favorite show.
I didn't mention Sheen.
No, I know.
Technically, Welker always plays Goddard, just with barks and dog noises. In this, Goddard talks, and Frank Welker is way better than whoever this is. Also, the plot bears no resemblance to the plot of the episode. Now I get it, video games take a long time to make. Well, okay, most video games. So probably they were given a one-sentence explanation of Jimmy's favorite movie star, Jet Fusion, is kidnapped by the evil Professor Calamitous, because they didn't have the full episode written yet. Still though, this is light years ahead of the other games visually. It looks like Jimmy Neutron. They even introduce a gym coach character unique to the game, and he looks like a Jimmy Neutron character, although he'll never be Gym Coach Belushi. And I mean, yeah, it's a PS2 game, things still look a little off sometimes, especially when they get real close to the faces, but the animation is fluid, and the models are about as close to the show as you could really get given the time. The controls are infinitely better, and oh hey, I can move the camera! Granted, you have weapons and the aiming kinda sucks, but it's never too big of an issue. Also, the platforming in this game is better than those other 3, but does that make it good? What do you think?
Well, based on the context, I'm guessing it's not.
It's not! Although here I have to admit I'm not very good at video games, so there are parts where I'm sucking, and it's because I'm bad, not the game. There's some completely fair deaths and failures in this playthrough. There's also a lot of bullshit. And I mean, even the best games have some bullshit, but Jetty Fusetron has more than the average game. For the most part, the game was pretty decent, but when it sucked, it fucking sucked. I got way more angry at this game than I did the other 3. With Jimmy for console, I was either seething in pure, thoughtless rage, or I was kinda laughing at the game for being as horrendously awful as it was. And the PC games are just too easy to ever get mad at beyond a simple, oh fuck off. But Jet Fusion gave me something the others didn't. Expectations. And when those expectations weren't met, I could perfectly articulate why. I'm angrier at this game because I care more about it. It could so easily be good, and it just isn't! Like I said, the game doesn't follow the plot of the episode at all. It opens with Jimmy building a machine to holographically project the contents of a Jet Fusion book? Then it goes wrong and instead turns Retroville into the worlds from the book. The game is broken up into 4 worlds with 2 levels and a boss stage each, plus a tutorial stage in Jimmy's school, where Jimmy gets a gun and starts killing his bullies. Like, presumably everyone else he's killing are holograms from the book, but this is before that. These kids are dead. And even if you want to argue it's only a light ray, you can also use Goddard's Play Dead trick, which is definitely lethal. Also, I guess Jimmy had his gun set to clone as well? Why are there so many butches? Now here's where you make a lesbian joke.
I don't know any lesbian jokes.
And I suppose Console still couldn't render Rob Paulson's voice because he's not in this one either. Now they had the good sense to not include Carl, but they've replaced his voice for Butch with...
This boss got your name on him, Neutron.
He really is irreplaceable. And apparently so is Tim Curry, as they've gotten him to reprise his role as Professor Calamitous.
Useless machine.
Christian Slater isn't, though. They got someone else voicing Jet, and...
I don't know exactly where I am, but I'm in some sort of totally metal room.
Yeah, he sounds perfectly fine. Also in the sound department, I have to mention how good the music is. So far the music has been forgettable and inoffensive enough that it wasn't really worth mentioning, with maybe the exception of the Flurp Factory, which is pretty bad. But this has some legitimately fun and memorable tracks. My friend Chris, who plays a lot more video games than I do, compared it to Ty the Tasmanian Tiger.
Oh, you know Chris. That must be how I know you.
Dude, I'm in like half your videos.
Mitzi?
The thing that's not good about the soundtrack is that in a few levels it doesn't really loop. It fades out and fades back in again. That's the lazy solution, but the tracks are good, so eh. After the Lindbergh Elementary Massacre, you enter the Asian Village, even though Jimmy outright says it's Japanese. Oh yeah, this game's kinda... racist.
No way, buddy. I just feel the need. The need. I bet you can't beat me around this track.
Although it's all supposed to be from the fictional worlds of a James Bond parody, so maybe it's actually subtle commentary on how problematic the old Bond films were. But probably it's just racist. The objective in every level is to collect all the invention parts to invent something to help you beat the stage. Also, you have to collect these nav chips to unlock later levels, which I think is bullshit. They set them up like they're just any other collectible, but you need them to progress. And backtracking through these levels can get a little tedious. Usually the invention parts are sitting around, but occasionally you'll have to beat a minigame for them. This race controls pretty poorly. You remember when I said you could have a challenging race without needing to do it perfect? That wasn't supposed to be foreshadowing, but it turned out to be. You basically can't hit a single oil slick if you want to win. Also, Jimmy meets a supposed 3-time champion sumo wrestler who's shorter than he is, and then just beats him in one try. He didn't even use an invention or anything. He's just stronger than this sumo wrestler. Also, you cannot touch water. It is instant death. Even if it is so shallow, Jimmy could easily wade through it. The first level takes place right outside the school, but after that, the levels don't look much like Retroville apart from the occasional anachronism. But you know what? I really like the design of these levels. Most of the invention parts are stuff Jimmy could come across naturally, but in this level you build a robot ninja, and one of the parts is just a robot ninja head. Seems like a cop-out. We get to the first boss, Sheen, who's now calling himself the Ultra Ninja Lord. They don't make super clear why he's evil, and my friends ended up thinking Sheen had just turned on Jimmy. And oh my god, this pissed me off. They give you basically no indication of what to do. Goddard will occasionally say,
Try to magnetically charge the Ultra Ninja Lord. Then, it might be easier to deflect the Ultra Lord action figures into him.
But there's no text box, so it's easy to miss, and honestly, that doesn't really help that much. There's more to conveyance than just having a character tell you what to do. Take these enemies. They got a big metal bucket on their head, so I know I have to use the magnet gun on them. Nothing about Sheen's design or moveset indicates what I'm supposed to do. So eventually I looked up a walkthrough that told me I had to use my magnet gun to deflect the Ultra Lord figures he throws back at him, except that didn't work either because what the walkthrough failed to mention is that every gun has 2 firing modes, and I have to use the alternate firing mode to deflect them. It's such a weirdly specific thing to do. Bad boss fight, it made me angry. Then Jimmy's off to the jungle, and yo, where did Jimmy get these sick threads? Gotta say, I'm not really into playing as a white man running into the jungle and killing the natives. And I get it, the jungle and the natives are holograms, but still, it's a bad look. But unlike the Japanese enemies, I can't say they have racist accents. Only because I don't know what they're going for with this voice.
Hello, big-headed one. I am the gatekeeper.
Speaking of races, there's a boat race that controls about 10 times better than the last race. Why? How were you able to make this race good, but not this one? I will say, the placement of this nav chip is just a little off. Could you not move that just like a little closer? And is it weird to say this game has a pacing issue? Nearly every level you get around the point where you're ready for the level to wrap up, and there's still just a little bit left. I got actually pissed off at this ending when I probably shouldn't have. It's inoffensive, and if it had been earlier in the level, I'd have thought nothing of it. But I was desperate for the level to end, and this is not fun. I have always hated run around and hit switches gameplay. Sometimes it works if there's a puzzle or something you have to figure out, but this one is just do platforming, hit a switch, do platforming, hit a switch. And like I said, the platforming is not good. It's such an obnoxious way to pad a level that really should have ended back here. And then Jimmy goes into a volcano, and this level is pretty short, actually. He also has to defend Goddard from fucking dragons in a minigame I'm told is also similar to Ty the Tasmanian Tiger. And we might not have bat out of heck, but we do get to ride around in minecarts with bats everywhere. There are so few obstacles to avoid in this track section, I don't know why they even bothered. Plus, if you, hit them and then have to restart, the ones you hit don't respawn. The boss for this area is Miss Fowl, who's also got some sick duds. I found this boss less infuriating, but I still had to look up what to do. I suppose there is a chance you could have figured out that using these switches creates puddles, and needing to push Miss Fowl into them on your own makes sense. She's got fire powers, water hurts her, checks out. And then we get to World 3, a pirate world, and this is where the game goes from redeemable to, okay, this one's bad too. Look at Jimmy's outfit! They found the sexiest pirate outfit they could and put it on a 10-year-old. There's so much platforming and on these little tiny poles that it's so easy to fall off of. And then there's these fucking ropes. You have to scale across here, avoiding the birds and climbing ladders. It genuinely had me questioning if it was even possible at points. It's so infuriatingly tedious. If I had to sum up the problems with this game in one word, that'd be it. It's tedious. There's so much exhausting little bullshit you have to do to get back to the fun part of the games. Listen, I used save states to beat this game. Tell me that's cheating, tell me I didn't beat the game legitimately, fine, but I must have saved hours of my life doing this. And look, I beat level 4 of Jimmy for console legitimately. You do not get to say I wasn't trying. Goddard has to chase some birds in a minigame whose controls are way too finicky. Didn't enjoy it. There's this shooting minigame, which doesn't control great, but it's pretty easy. I have no complaints. It just feels like padding. There's a fishing segment? Because early 2000s platformers are renowned for their great fishing segments.
Yeah, they are.
It's not terribly difficult once you figure out what you're doing, but I listened very closely to Goddard's instructions, and it still took me forever to figure this out. Then there's a jet ski section, and oh my god, stay in your lane, Jet Fusion! Almost every attempt to spice up the gameplay ends up being detrimental to the game, and the few that aren't are mostly lateral moves. None of these are gonna draw me back. Focus on making this a fun game, not making the game longer. Anyways, the next level spices up the gameplay by being a submarine level. This controls better than PC Jimmy's Rocket, but there's more obstacles in this one, so I'd say they're equally annoying. Definitely better than Negatron's Submarine, though. There's a squid mini-boss. This is nothing to write home about. It is a very normal mini-boss, not terribly challenging, but you'll probably still die once or twice. A perfectly acceptable way to pad your game. But then there's this icicle shooting game that goes on way too long. After that pain in the ass, we get a boss fight with Cindy, who's had the most dramatic change. Miss Fowl and Sheen just changed outfits. Cindy's been transformed into a fucking sea hag. She has every right to be mad at us. And Carl, Libby, Hugh, Judy, and Nick might not have made it into this game, but Cindy's dog Humphrey does. He's been in 3 of the 4 games so far. This boss fight is way easier than the others because I figured out what to do without consulting a walkthrough. So to compensate, they made it much longer, which is annoying, but it's still the best boss fight of the game. Then we get to the final world, which opens at a communication tower. And you want to talk about pointless tedium for the sake of pointless tedium, here it is, folks. Enjoy the thrilling gameplay of this floor maze with incredibly precise timing, swinging from rope to rope, and if you fall you have to start all over again, pushing a box through a maze of invisible lasers. A precise marble rolling section, a button mashing minigame that goes on just shy of eternity, and goddamn motherfucking slide puzzles. This is what the very worst licensed games do for padding. This is straight up Phoenix Games level shit. Jet Fusion is above this. It can be really fun, but not this level, man. With the other levels, I just wanted to get through the bullshit so I could go back to the fun parts, but this level is oops all bullshit. Oh, and did you make it to the end of the level without the invention piece at the very start? Well, you can't backtrack in this level, so it looks like you're starting the level over. I already had my doubts any kid would be able to make it this far, but this level guarantees none of them would ever beat this game. Then there's a Goddard snowboarding section. It controls better than Jimmy for console, but then again, so would snowboarding on my remote-controlled Goddard. And how else could this game end but with the most tedious boss fight ever? You do at least get to use the Jimmy bot, something Jimmy doesn't actually do in the episode. And there's 2 FMV cutscenes, one at the beginning that feels really disconnected from the game, and one to end things off. This looks better than the show. They did not have to go this hard for a licensed game, especially because no one was getting this far in the game. After those first 3 train wrecks, I really wanted to praise Jet Fusion. A lot of the game is good, but way too much of it is just unbearable. It's almost a victim of its own ambition. If they'd settled for a very standard run-and-gun collectathon with some platforming, it'd be a much better game, because that ambition only went so far. They wanted the game to be bigger and grander, but they were lacking either the time, money, skill, or gumption to make those extra parts good. As it is, I really can't endorse it. I actually had this as a kid, and I never made it past the first jungle level. And you know what? That's probably the ideal way to experience the game. Quit early. But even a child more dedicated than I think, would get frustrated and give up well before the end of the game. The best thing to do in this game is just run around and experience the world, stay away from the mini-games. And finally, there was Attack of the Twonkies from 2004, which if you're watching this at the end of my Season 2 video, is an episode I haven't covered yet, and it actually sticks a little closer to the plot of the episode than Jet Fusion. It has differences. They get to the Twonkies being evil a lot faster, mostly because you kinda have to in a video game. I'm equal parts impressed at them for making so many character models, not just major characters like Carl and Libby, but Jimmy's whole class and even Principal Willoughby. And also amused that they clearly reused Jet Fusion's assets, giving us the odd sight of movie-designed Cindy with Season 2 Libby. In this game, you collect parts to build inventions. Again. I think Jet Fusion definitely did this concept best. Collecting the parts was more satisfying, and it felt like you got them at an appropriate pace. This game, you have to figure out which parts go together, even though Jimmy makes it very clear to you which parts go together. And there's too many of them, because you got gadgets, inventions, and super inventions. Some gadgets are useful, some are necessary, and some are purely aesthetic and do not affect gameplay. Inventions are basically your weapons, and occasionally you'll just get to something and go, welp, time to go through the list trying every invention because I know it's one of them, but it's not clear which one. And super inventions are mostly for boss fights. They also get the writing in the cutscenes a lot closer to the show. Granted, a lot of this is dialogue from the show, but even the unique parts sound like Jimmy Neutron.
School emergency! We have a school emergency, people! Don't panic! Leave in a calm manner! Please don't raise your voices, then you won't be able to hear me yelling at you! Come with me! Follow me, but don't run! Don't run! Get out of my way! And don't panic!
They do bring up the plot point from the episode of Carl looking for a hypoallergenic pet, but then when Jimmy gets back with the Twonkie, it turns evil pretty quick, so that just doesn't tie into anything. Anyways, there's an intro in the lab before you blast off to Twonkus 3. There's so much tutorial dialogue, and you can't skip any of it. This is the most generic rocket segment I've ever seen. You have played this level in hundreds of other games, and yet it is easily the best rocket segment out of any of these games. That's kind of the place Attack of the Twonkies finds itself. Bland, generic, and also easily better than the other games. Actually, the platforming is way better in this game than the others, so naturally it's the one with the least platforming segments. Really, there's so little to say about most of these levels. You collect some shit, you invent some shit, you move on. Jimmy gets back to Earth with a Twonkie, and this is about where the game diverts from the episode with the Twonkies hearing music and turning evil in the same cutscene they're introduced. A desk traps Jimmy in the room with the Twonkies, and he invents his shrink ray. So I'm thinking shrink the desk, but apparently Jimmy was thinking shrink himself in a mirror. In the game, we learn Sheen's awful singing turns the evil Twonkies back to good. Now in the show, his voice puts them to sleep, but they had to change it because Jimmy's Luigi's Mansion backpack can only suck up the small ones. And that's a lot of the game. De-transforming the big Twonkies, then sucking up the little Twonkies. Occasionally there's boss fights against bigger Twonkies like this lightning one. These guys are unique to the game as only the red Twonkie appears in the special, but mostly this is sucking up Twonkies. You do it around town, then you go do it in the park, and hey Nick, you don't look deformed. There's this awful segment where you gotta round up a bunch of llamas and put them back in the petting zoo. This was the first time the game started to get frustrating, but ooh boy was it not the last. There's a boss fight against an ice Twonkie and it is infuriating. You have to shoot exploding pucks off these ramps and the game is so incredibly picky about when you can and cannot hit it. If it's roaring or doing its ice breath, the puck will blow back at you. If you do it as it's ground pounding, it'll blow up the puck. While it's reforming the ice structure, it has a shield? Are you kidding me? Why? Just let me have this. You can only shoot this thing in between attacks or when it's throwing these snowballs that turn into icicles, which are also a bitch because the icicles block the ramps, so you have to run around to another ramp, and whenever this boss is on screen, the emulator slows to a crawl, which just adds another layer to the whole thing. But you think, okay, if they're gonna be this picky about when attacks do and don't land, maybe he'll only take like 3 or 4 hits to go down. 12! He takes 12 fucking hits! I was almost gonna give this game credit because it never felt like I needed save states, but this sure ruined that. This fight took an hour and a half with save states. God help you if you're playing it on the actual system. Fuck you! Fuck you! I am enjoying your death! Your death brings me pleasure! I enjoy watching you go down, you fucking piece of shit! I'm so happy you're dead! I am elated that you're fucking dead! Oh, fucking die, you piece of shit! Fucking die! Fuck you! Anyways, wrapping
Live
this
from
one up,
Retroland.
Fuck this boss battle. I mean, fuck this boss battle. God damn it, really took the wind out of my sails with that one. Then we get a Retroland level? Retroland wasn't in the episode at all, but hey, absolutely give me another Retroland level. This time I can ride Octopuke and the Butterfly Ride, but not Show Me the Mummy, which is fine, we already have that one. This level is actually kind of fun. Until you get to the end where you have to earn 50 coins by playing games at the arcade. That's not how that works, it should really be tickets, not coins, but I'm way more concerned about being forced to not just play these games, but being forced to beat the high scores to move on. So you gotta play them over and over and over. This is some Jet Fusion bullshit, Attack of the Twonkies. There's a Frogger knockoff with a Squirrel, a Galaga knockoff with the Yokians, an Adventure knockoff with Ultralord, and Breakout and Asteroids. I'm not even gonna call these knockoffs, they are functionally just Breakout and Asteroids. I was hyped to play an Ultralord game, but it's probably the worst of these. These would be fun if you only had to play them once, but the requirement to beat a high score really drags out the end of this level. But then we finally get to ride Bat Out of Heck in a cutscene. Ah well, good enough. Here you fight the enlightened Twonky by blowing holes in the roof to let sunlight in. It really feels like you're doing nothing for most of this battle, but the trick with this level is to blow enough holes in the ceiling, you basically chain damage him to death, so you deal most of your damage all at once, which feels impractical for a boss fight where you'd kinda wanna be draining his energy the whole time, but ah well, it's still way less tedious than the Ice Twonk. Then you fuck around in a radio station a while, then face off with the final Twonk, who reminds me of the things from Attack the Block. He uses powers of all three bosses, and yet is way easier to kill. Not effortless, but it's not something noteworthy in how awful it is. Fucking writhe, bitch. I'm not even happy you're dead. I feel nothing. Your death is meaningless to me. It's the least obnoxious game, but I can't say much of it is particularly fun. I think it overcomplicates things in a more pervasive way than Jet Fusion. Fusion just needed to stay in its lane. Twonkies makes every step a chore. Literally, it's on a to-do list. I had this one as a kid too, and I'm pretty confident I quit at the Ice Twonky. So now I'm gonna rank all of them, and just to be extra spiteful, I'm including the worst level for every game. I was gonna do best too, but for most of these, the best level is, I don't know, that one, but bet your ass I got a worst level for every game. In last place, surprising no one, is Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius for console. This is a 1 out of 10. Not a full 0, but still a 1. It's not completely broken, but it's pretty fucking unacceptable. Worst level is level 4, which is quite possibly the worst level I've ever played in any game. In 4th place is Jimmy Neutron vs. Jimmy Negatron. It inherits all of the first PC game's worst traits without the fun advantage of being open world. Worst level is the submarine level. It does not control good. Above that, I'm putting Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius for PC. I think they did decently to accommodate for the cut corners, but the corners are still noticeably cut. The worst level is the ending in the Yokian ship, though I'd say it's the best of the worst levels. It's only kind of a pain in the ass. In second, I'm dropping Jimmy Neutron Attack of the Twonkies. It was honestly hard for me to stack this one up to Jet Fusion. I had more fun with Jet Fusion, but I was also a lot more miserable. But there's also definitely misery in this game, so I can't even give it the edge on being inoffensive. Worst level is the Ice Twonky, which is the worst boss battle in this entire series. And in first place is Jimmy Neutron Jet Fusion, which is really sad. I had the most fun with this one. There's a good game in there somewhere, but oh my god, there's so much bullshit. Honestly, the perfect Jimmy Neutron game lies somewhere between this and Attack of the Twonkies. Like, give me the core of this game without any of the extra mini-games or whatever, plus give it the controls from Attack of the Twonkies. It just feels a little nicer to play as this Jimmy. It would be a great game. Worst level was the communication tower with its fucking slide puzzles. Honestly, it was kind of a hard choice, which is a weird thing to say about the best game. I'm disappointed I didn't like a single one of these. But hey, I at least had fun looking into it.
Big no! Sorry, what were you talking about?
Well, I was about to start talking about the handheld games.
Gotta go fast!
Spiny? Oh, there he goes. He's running. I'll tell him about it later.
There's something that I gotta say. Don't even try to walk away. For too long you've done the squawking. My friends, oh that's why I'm not walking. I just put on my coat. I'm going out now, kiss my nose.